Hi, I'm Doug Johnson.
And I'm Sophia Jaber.
And today we're going to talk about cloud-hosted desktops. Sophia, what is a cloud-hosted desktop?
Cloud-hosted desktops, very similarly like having applications on the cloud, is a desktop that you can access that is not actually in the hard drive in your computer. So that can be set up in a number of ways. And really depending on the service provider that you have or the person that's providing you the solution, they'll be able to get you to access it through an application to that desktop, or you can access it through a browser, depending on, again, how they set it up. But it's essentially being able to have that desktop wherever you are because it's in the cloud. So that's one of the conveniences of having a cloud desktop.
So it sounds like, now I sit down in front of my computer and I have all my applications and I have all my data. So what you're saying is that in a cloud-hosted desktop, I log into that desktop from anywhere and I have the same experience and access to all the same things no matter where I am?
Yes, exactly. So the difference is when you're on your computer, when you're at home, let's say, and you're on your home computer, all of your items are there. You turn on the computer, you have your desktop, your files are in your documents folder, so on and so forth. With a cloud desktop, if you turn on your computer, and let's say we'll use this scenario that it's available on the browser, you would go to the browser, to the URL, and sign in just like you would your bank or some other, application you're signing into, right? Through the browser. And from there, you would get a virtual desktop or a desktop that has all the information you need stored in that location in a data center somewhere so that it's readily available to you.
So I imagine in this time of COVID that is a very effective solution to allow companies to allow their employees to work from home, that they could extend the desktop that the employees used to sitting in front of, they could extend it to them at home, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is such a great tool to have. To be able to have a virtual desktop is really the direction that a lot of companies want to go these days. Because not only do you have that accessibility, but it also provides security for anything. If anything happens in the building with a lot of brick and mortar locations, if there's a break-in or a fire, or something happens to that computer, you no longer have to be afraid that your data is gone because that desktop computer was sitting right there during the incident that occurred. So it really provides some really peace of mind on a lot of levels. But the access, especially during time of COVID, makes it very, very flexible for that person to be able to work and to be able to have all their data stored in one place for very, very tight security.
I imagine it provides a much more secure experience as well because everything is contained in that desktop in the cloud running on a computer someplace rather than on your computer where it could, for instance, get corrupted or infected by a virus?
Absolutely. And the other thing I was thinking of was how so many people, there's so many options these days with Dropbox and OneDrive and all these different places where you're storing files, right? And it's really difficult to manage that security or really make sure that that data isn't being compromised or moved somewhere else throughout all these different, areas that you have to store files. Mm-hmm. So being able to have it in one place in one area and that's accessible and manageable it's very convenient, not only for the person so that they're efficient while they're doing their job, but it's also just peace of mind for the business owner or for, the company that makes sure that that data is stored in one place. So no need for Dropbox, no need for OneDrive. No need for being able to have them in multiple places, and you can use those tools in more effective ways.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, I can see that would be really, really useful especially with COVID. Can you talk about any clients that have moved to hosted desktop as a result of COVID?
Actually, yeah. We just recently had a client that has had multiple locations, and this is very common where you have offices that span out, businesses want to expand, right? So they have 5, 6, 7 offices. And during the COVID period, they had to close their offices down. We had to sanitize, make sure everything was okay before they can open back up. But during that period, they needed that ability and that access. So they asked us to give them that ability to access the cloud desktop. And from there, we were able to, because we've already had a set of plans in place for this already, we were able to turn it on and get them on the hosted desktop within a very short amount of time during the period which they were closed. And then when they opened back up, they didn't have to worry about the data being somewhere else. They just went right back to work in the same space, in the same environment. And it was as if they were in the office the entire time.
So that sounds like the implementation is a fairly easy process or short process?
Easy.
Or does it? I guess it really
depends. Yeah. I mean, I think that the point of having a managed service provider is so that it comes across as easy. We handle all the hard stuff. we can take care of it. We like it. We do it every day and we provide those solutions. So what we want to provide is an easy solution. So it's like getting a keys to a car. Here you go, hop in your car, and we want to make sure that solution is there for them. So yeah, it's easy for them. And that's what we want. And a managed service provider, our goal is to be there and support them and make sure that if they do need something during the time of COVID or during a time of a massive new hire or power outage, any example you can provide, we can provide that solution for them, whether it be, getting that virtual desktop or, deploying it because of, an emergency or an experience that occurs.
I imagine it can be pretty confusing for a client to try to figure out what provider to use because there's Google and there's Microsoft Azure and there's a plethora of companies out there and they all have very different price points. So can you talk a little bit about how a managed service provider can be useful on that point to be able to help the client determine what it is they need and how to get it?
Yeah. Actually, I think we both can speak to this because we were doing this recently. Quite a few of our clients are noticing how important and how helpful it is now to have this information readily available. So a lot of those local servers that they're having and the on-site hardware that they had, they're requesting for us to move to the cloud. So it really is up to the managed service provider to identify what applications they're using, how their environment is set up, and what tools will be able to provide that same experience on a cloud perspective. And a lot of the times, at least in our experience, Microsoft Azure has really provided us a secure platform to transition people who are on Windows servers onto a virtual desktop experience and be able to do that transition without causing any disruption to the business.
Yeah, because Microsoft has that new product that's based on Microsoft Azure. It's called Windows Virtual Desktop.
Yes.
Which is a far superior experience than terminal server and things that were used in the past. So from the user experience, it's much more familiar. It's based on Windows 10. The user feels like they're sitting in front of their desktop.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we both could speak to this because we've just done this recently. So, can you provide an example? I know that I brought one up, but I know that there was one that you took care of recently.
Yeah, we recently had a client that is a company that's been in business for many years. They're in the second generation of family management. Very conservative company, had multiple locations, had somewhere, slightly less than 100 employees. And COVID hit and we moved them home. We set them up so all the people could work from home. And it worked so well for them that they came back to us a few weeks later and said, hey, can you move us to a cloud-hosted desktop in the next 30 days? Because we're not going to renew our lease. And our response was 30, maybe that's pushing it. 60, we can definitely do it. And we were able to do that. We were able to mobilize and we were able to move that entire company's operations to Microsoft Azure on Windows Virtual Desktop in exactly 60 days. And the day that they turned the lights off in the building is the day that they went live on the cloud.
Yeah, I loved that because it was so seamless, the way that transition happened. And there was a lot of work on the back end that we were doing to make sure that that client had a great experience, and they did. And to think that businesses that are brick and mortar are looking at these cloud hosted desktop options now, because in situations like this, how much money they're able to save now because they don't have to rent a space, and they can provide, and we can help them provide that security and knowing that their data is available on that hosted desktop, and they're loving it.
Right. And now they don't have to buy equipment on a regular basis. So they're paying on a per user basis. But, one of the things that I found confusing is the pricing. Because the pricing is all over the place.
Yes.
You look at cloud hosted service providers, I've seen it as much as $25 a user. I've seen it $500 a user. And I believe it really depends on what it is you need. You need to do an in-depth analysis of what does our company need? What applications are we running? What are the requirements? And, you need a managed service provider that has experience in those technologies to be able to put it together and then to be able to price it out for you and make the right solution.
Oh, absolutely.
Make that decision.
Yeah, and again, another key reason why a managed service provider has that value, because that value is being able to have that experience to say, hey, it's not going to be $500 because you don't need all these tools. Let's get it and let's make sure.
It's not going to be 50.
It's not going to be 50 either. Yeah, no, but we actually can give them a more in-depth assessment on what a virtual desktop would work and how efficient it would be for their company. So it's that knowledge is so helpful because there is a wide range, man. The virtual desktop world is vast.